I've often covered the dangers of so-called gender-affirming care and trans ideology being pushed on impressionable children. Jazz Jennings is a case that the LGBT lobby have clung to in an effort to push their agenda. The 22-year-old's transition journey was chronicled in a hit reality TV series, I Am Jazz, covering the child's life, family and gender-affirming procedures, including puberty blockers and eventual surgery. But is Jazz Jennings' story really as successful as the transgender activists would want you to believe? Joining me to discuss is Head of Research at LGB Alliance, Malcolm Clark. Malcolm, you wrote a fantastic piece about the tragedy of Jazz Jennings, where you unpack the darker reality behind Jennings' transition journey. In so many ways, it really is a dark story. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, I do a lot of research on the history of the gay movement and the history of the so-called LGBTQ movement. And obviously, like most people, I just accepted the rough outline of the story of Jazz as we've been presented it by the American mainstream media. And then I decided, as I often do, to go back and really analyze what we were told. And so I went back to the original broadcasts with Barbara Walters in 2007 when she went to see a little 4-year-old. And I was just amazed when I watched it to see how Barbara Walters, who was this icon of American journalism, wasn't asking any searching questions and was just accepting everything that Jazz Jennings' rather strange mother in particular, and her parents in general, were saying about, I say her, so it's so easy to get to use the wrong pronouns. I mean, the point is Jazz Jennings is a boy, was a boy, and is a man. But the mainstream media convinced us that this boy was a girl. And when you go back and look at the original footage, you're amazed at how much were being deluded by her parents and how much it seems to me that it may well have been, if not a grift, then something very close to a shared delusion across the family.
Well, I've spoken to trans woman Blair White on a number of occasions, and one of her great lines is a transgender 4-year-old. Yeah, she tells it like it is. But one of her great lines is a transgender 4-year-old is like a vegan cat. We all know who's making the lifestyle decisions. And talking about the parents in this case, they claim she wanted to medically transition from when she was a toddler, from when she was 2 years old. Let's have a look.
I'll never forget one day I was at the computer and Jazz came up to me and she said, "Mom, when is the good fairy going to come with her magic wand and change my penis into a vagina?" And I was really confused. You know, I have this 2-year-old coming up to me and saying, you know, I'm a girl. Like I had a pit inside of my stomach. I'm like, my kid is not normal. I mean, this is not normal.
They took me to the doctor when I was 3 years old, and she held up 2 dolls. One doll was a girl and had girl parts, and one doll was a boy and had boy parts. And she said, "Which do you have right now?" And I pointed to the boy doll. And then she said, "Which do you want?" And I pointed to the girl.
The astonishing thing is that I haven't seen that little clip, but I've seen so many different clips where Jeanette Jennings, the mother, and Jazz tell so many different versions of this story. For example, the bit you've just played with Jazz saying that the doctor said X, Y, and Z. Well, I've seen interviews with the doctor who says a very different version of it. She, Marilyn Volker, who was the doctor, was a sex therapist. Not even Marilyn Volker. The idea that you would go to Marilyn Volker to find out if your kid was trans is so ludicrous. But Marilyn Volker says the opposite. She says that it was Jazz who said these specific things, and she says that Jazz said, "I want to have that body," looking at the little girl doll. But now I hear that Jazz says it's the opposite, and it was Marilyn who said that, which is much more believable. You know, who would ask a child, "These are 2 dolls, which doll would you like to be in the future? I mean, that's ludicrous. And even if, look, if I said in my article, if I had been shown dolls of Batman and Superman, and a therapist had said, which superstar would you like to be? I might have pointed to Superman, but that doesn't mean to say they should attach wings to my body or do things to me. It's so absurd. However, Jennings also said that she had decided herself that Jazz was born in the wrong body. She looked at the diagnostic, the DSM, the sort of health book that looks at all the different mental health issues, and doctors rely on it, but that's doctors. Jeanette is just, a citizen of South Florida, has no medical background. She decides to look at the DSM and diagnoses for herself that her child is transgender. And then she says, I just needed someone to confirm it. And so she went to Marilyn Volker. I mean, the story doesn't make any sense at all. And if you were Barbara Walters, if you or I were in the position that Barbara Walters was in 2007, we would have asked them questions. We would have kept our skepticism. That's all that's the responsibility you have to your audience.